Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of Penny for My Thoughts. I wanted to come here to speak about one of my videos that I put out, one of my real talk videos of my perspective on things. And I put out a video basically about staying in a child's place. And I'm pretty much was saying, in certain situations, how can you tell a child to stay in a child's place when adult things are happening to them or they see adult situations all day, every day? And I think that maybe a couple people had questions about that. Not really a lot, but just maybe one or two of just maybe thinking I was talking about something else, of saying, okay, well, just let your child do anything. No. Basically, I was iterating on childhood trauma. And I am speaking from a personal experience, personal experiences. And, you know, not just me, but other children and stuff like that go through trauma in their households and their families. They see drama and trauma all day, every day. Dysfunctional, households, no stability. Things are happening to them. And like I say, I speak from personal experience. And I've been told, as a kid, stay in a child's place. But yet, I've seen things, I've dealt with things, and things have happened to me as a child. So, to me, and I reiterated this when I made a video, I said, how can you tell a child to stay in a child's place? They're already out of a child's place when things are happening to them and they're not protected, especially when things are happening to them from people in their own family. And at that point, you're already out of a child's place. Adult things are happening to you. You see adult things happening. And sometimes something is being done about it and sometimes it's not. I feel like, a lot of times kids get dismissed. Like, okay, you see all this stuff going on. These things are happening to you, or you see them happening to your parents or whatever, or one parent or whichever. And, a child may want to question about it. Okay, why is this? And what are you going to tell them? You don't worry about it, stay in a child's place. But okay, if they see, if, use for example, if the cops are at their house all the time, if their parents are in jail, or there's a lot of domestic violence all the time, or there's abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, and they see this or these things are happening to them, then they're not in a child's place anymore. They're in an adult place. Adult things are happening to them. And, it's some things adults can't even deal with. How's a child supposed to deal with it? There are some things, that adults see that they don't understand. Think about a child that's, young, a teenager, or even younger. 5, 4, 3 years old, and they don't even understand what's going on. They just know, it's drama all the time. They just know that they're being abused. They just know that they're being sexual abused, mentally abused. And they don't even understand that. And, sometimes people want to dismiss things. And that's, to me, is dismissive. If a child is wondering, okay, well, why is this happening? What are you going to say? Stay in a child's place, don't worry about it. But they see these things. There's children in CPS and hospital and stuff like that. They're not in a child's place anymore. Seeing or drugs and stuff like that in drug infested houses, they're not in a child's place anymore. These are adult things. Or being sexually abused. they're definitely not in a child's place anymore. Or, seeing just negativity and drama in the family, or domestic violence all day every day, or they have to completely go from house to house or live with different family members. They're not in a child's place anymore. So, I that is just my perspective. I'm not even saying that my perspective is right. But if you think about it, they're already out of a child's place. I don't even, now that don't go for everything. And I'm not saying, a child could just do whatever and they could just lash out and act out. But a lot of times that happens. All they see is drama, trauma, abuse. They're being abused. When the parents is being abused, or somebody, their brother, so whatever, are being abused and they don't even understand it. How could you say, be in a child's place? And even in that, of even like acting out and stuff like that, you would wonder why. All they see is trauma, all they see is drama, all they see is abuse. And I will tell you from personal experience, when you grow up, especially when it's not acknowledged as a kid and it's just, move on from it, those things grow up with you. It literally, when they say trauma lives inside of you, trauma lives inside of you. And but I also believe it's not where you're coming from, is where you're going. And some people can't deal with that. Some people can't deal with the trauma that they've been through as a kid, and it has levels too. Now there are some people that has went through some of the worst things as a kid, and they come out and they're they get through it. Maybe, but maybe behind closed doors they're not. And now, if they come from, a situation where their family acknowledges maybe trying to get help and stuff like that, then, that helps a little bit. Not saying that the trauma still doesn't live with them, not saying that, it's not still there, but, they had help. But if you're from, where everybody is just dismissing it and you're supposed to just stay in a child's place, and then you get older and you're like, well, dang, like, nobody explained to me why all this was happening, why all this trauma and turmoil was happening, why I was, had to deal with this type of abuse. As I say, I come from personal I don't say nothing that I have not dealt with personally or seen personally. I feel like I am qualified to speak for this. If only you knew. But, I don't want to get it misconstrued of saying, somebody think, okay, well, just let your child do that. That's not even what I was even saying. Because yes, the child is supposed to stay in a child's place and not be in adult problems. But if you put them in that position, if they've seen things and heard things, and this is all the time, there are some kids that see like their parents being unalived. You can't tell that child to stay in a child's place. They That's something an adult can't even deal with and get over. How can a child get over and deal with it? Or they're being abused, and they're by parent, by family member, whatever. You can't tell that child to stay in a child's place, because they're going to wonder why. Like, okay, why is this happening to me? What do I do with this information? Literally. And you can't tell them, don't question it. This is just, we just got over it. We, keep it in the house. And that's another thing. Keep everything in the house. And that sometimes give off of not acknowledging either. Like, what do you mean keep it in the house? If you've, so you can't talk to a therapist, you can't, you can't call the police, or, whichever. I feel like, that gives a bad feeling in a child, of feeling like they can't even talk about things, because it's supposed to be in the family, and it's supposed to be keep your business in the house. or it's supposed to be, don't question it, you're a child. How are they not supposed to question it and, their child, if, if their parents are both on drugs, or, one parent is unalive and the other parent, or they both unalive, or they live some type of lifestyle where they got people coming in and out of their house, and they're not safe. How can, in those situations, how can you tell a child to stay in a child's place? I feel like they have the right to ask questions like, why is this happening? Why isn't anybody doing anything? Why is it not being acknowledged? It's and these things go way back, and I don't know, like way back, till you don't find out stuff until either it happens to you, as a child, and you're like, oh, I didn't know that this was actually it. What it's not an isolated situation, and especially when we start talking about sexual abuse, it's not an isolated situation. When you start to find out those things, oh, well, it didn't just happen to me, or just happen to this person. Oh, this has been going on, and nobody wants to talk about it. And for an adult, that's a problem. Think about a child, think about a teenager. And then you hear like so many stories and things, like of just people selling off their kids, and and locking their kids in cages and all type of stuff. These are things that an adult got to get through. Think about a child. At that point, the child is, like I say, the child is already out of a child's place. They're in an adult place now. It's hard sometimes to just overcome some of those things. And granted, yes, God gives us forgiveness, and God, God helps us through things, but let's not, act like you can't acknowledge it. No, because you forgive, but you don't forget. And sometimes you forget, but your body don't. I am a firm believer that trauma lives in your body. I really am. And, and then we come from a religious standpoint, it says, God to help you. God, yes, God will. But I don't think God will be like, hey, just act like it don't even happen. Act like it just don't happen at all. I just don't. I don't think that, because then how are you healing? And even when you heal, you don't forget. You don't forget that the situation wasn't acknowledged. You don't forget that you dealt with things, you've seen things as a kid, and nobody wants to acknowledge it because you're supposed to stay in a child's place. You don't forget those things. Of you know it makes you, it's like sweeping under the rug. It makes you robotic. And then you grow up sometimes. Some people grow up and they literally cannot deal with it. Like, their life is just full of stress. Some of them unalive themselves. Some of them like just bury it, and then something triggers, and you just lose it all. And because you've already been put out of a child's place, and all you know is no one explain anything to you. You just see things, you just deal with things. And okay, it also has levels to it. Okay, if you see a distant family member, you hear they got stuff going on, but it's not in your house, but that's not going on in your house, okay, then maybe you can say, you know you don't worry about your cousin over there or what's going on over there. Like, your house specifically, you have stability when you were a kid and everything else, so that doesn't directly affect you. But if it's around you all the time and it's directly affecting you as a kid, and kids are being abused sexually, mentally, physically, by some of their own family members that are supposed to protect them, not only protect them from the outside, but also be protected, period. And then, they're the ones that you trust, the ones that you actually trust are doing things to you. And, you're supposed to just stay in a child's place and just don't question it or just forget about it. I just, I just don't agree with that. And that's why I say, you can't tell a child to stay in a child's place when they've already been forced out of a child's place. There's kids that are. I just seen a story the other day of this woman that had two kids by her father. Like, you can't tell somebody like that to stay in a child. They're already out of a child's place. You just, those are the things I am talking about. When I say you can't tell a child that's already forced out of a child's place, you can't say stay in a child's place. And I'm in reiterating, I'm not saying, just let kids just do whatever and this and that. I'm talking about a specific situations, trauma, drama. That is what I'm speaking on. And if kids that are dealing with this, if they act out, can you get mad at them? If they're going to school and acting out or this and that, can you get upset with them? Because there's stuff going on at their house that, or not even that. There's also situations that they've dealt with that you don't even know. You could literally have seen it. You can have a child in a nice home, stable house and whatever. They go over to a family member house. The family member is abusing them. You don't even know it. They have been put out of, even though the people in their house directly didn't do it, the other family member did it at their house. So now the child is put out of a child's place now. And then that's one of those situations where you got to start, investigating everything else and all the other type of stuff. That's a problem too. And sometimes in families, those things get swept under the rug too. Now, sometimes, it will get handled, really. But sometimes those things get swept under the rug too. And it's just like, oh, well, this family member, we don't think they would do this or do that or don't. No. We don't think they'd abuse them or they'd this and that. And like I say, I'm talking on personal experience, multiple personal experiences. So I am very qualified to feel the way I feel. But I know that a lot of people probably won't see it that way. Everybody is entitled to their own opinion. Everybody is entitled to how they feel. And, there are some people that they're like, hey, I've been through this or whatever, but, I pretty much got through it. But then again, it's still there though. And maybe even on the outside, they're strong, but behind closed doors, you never know. They could just be like, that whatever happened to me at 3 years old or whatever, like that's affecting me today. It didn't affect me yesterday. It didn't affect me a month ago. It didn't affect me years ago. But today it's affecting me. Triggers and things like that, those things are real. And, and when we talk about a religious standpoint, a lot of that stuff is always swept under the rug when we talk about like very religious situations. And I mean very religious, because religion got its pros and cons too. And of using God or whatever to cover up things or this or that or whatever. People in the pulpit doing stuff to their own family members, to their own kids, to their own, sibling or whatever, and still behind the pulpit and still doing those things. And those things haven't been acknowledged because it's like, okay, well, we're going to just deal with it and we're going to pray it away and, whichever. And Yes, that works, but it's praying to heal it, not to send it away, because you're still a human being at the end of the day. You got the right to feel a certain type of way of what was done to you. And, you know, there are literally in the world, there are people that have that have kids with their own family members and stuff like that. And they just, oh, we're just gonna pray it away and this and that. No, you know, or oh, that's just a child. You know, you hear these stories and you see these stories about stuff happening. This stuff happens all the time. People got their kids locked in cages, or they send it to somebody else's house and they're locked in cages. They're not in a child's place anymore. Now they're in an adult place. Adults can't handle that and come out, emotionally unscathed. So how's a kid supposed to do it? Sweeping it under the rug, not acknowledging it. Yes, you can heal. Yes, as you get older, you get therapy and this and that. But like, if you're constantly dealing with no acknowledgement, it's hard. It really is. Again, I speak from personal experience. It's hard. You forgive with an anchor. You heal with an anchor. Meaning, it's heavy. It can be done, but it's heavy. And that, you know, being a kid and no one explaining anything to you why the stuff is going on, or, kids that's like in and out of the system and their parents are just can't take care of them, or they just won't, or on drugs, alcohol, whatever. Not me personally, but I've seen, in the vicinity of it. And, at some point those kids are going to ask like, well, what, why I haven't had a stable house, why I haven't had a stable life. I don't feel like, that's saying that they can't stay in a child's place. I mean, I feel like, they should be able to question those things. Why has this happened? Why has this happened to me? Why, when you get older and you realize that you didn't have a stable childhood, you didn't have a stable life, that it's been disruptive or destructive, and maybe it wasn't a loud destructive. Maybe it was a quiet destructive. Like, okay, you're not, it's not a whole big thing to everybody else, but little stuff is happening that nobody wants to speak about, that, want to be swept under the rug. And if a child, asks, well, hey, why does this happen? Why did that happen? Why did this happen? Can you really tell them to stay in a child's place? Because they're not. They're not in a child's place no more. I mean, and, some kids grow up and either they become that same exact thing. I've seen, their parents was on drugs, they grow up or whatever, and they feel like it's not traumatic to them or whichever, then they end up doing it because the trauma's there. And sometimes, things repeat itself. And then you got, in certain communities, oh, let's not talk about get on therapy or stuff like that. And I'm like, why not? Why not? Because you got to be able to talk about it. You got to, if you haven't questioned it as a kid, because you was always told not to question it, then as an adult you're gonna question it. Like, why is this? Why is that? Maybe some don't. I don't know. I don't. This is just my perspective and what I've seen and what I've dealt with personally. I can't speak for everybody, but I do feel like I qualified to speak on this. Period. Because when I say things, I want to explain why I say them. I don't want it to be, misconstrued or whichever, of where I'm actually coming from when I say things. When I actually say, in certain situations, how can you tell a child to stay in a child's place when adult things have happened to them or they've seen adult things? Because to me, that's not acknowledging it, and to me, that's sweeping it under the rug. And not saying that you owe kids explanation, no, because yes, as a child, you do stay in a child's place, but in certain situations, that when you have been already, when a child has already been thrown into an adult situation, in adult stuff, telling them to stay in a child's place is just not valid. To me personally, it's just not. And, everybody there got their own opinions about it, but people that have the common sense to actually think about it, like, that makes sense. Can't tell a child that has been thrown into adult situations to stay in a child's place. There are kids that have their parents may have been on drugs. The parents are giving the kids drugs for whatever reason. You've put you've put the child in an adult situation. I've heard these things. And I have no idea why. I don't know why people do these things. Like, if you're an adult, if you want to do that, then why don't you do it? Why do you have to shoot your child up? I don't understand that. But they've been put in an adult situation. I've heard of people, selling their kids off to be abused and stuff like that, selling them for drugs, selling it. Just, these are things that you're putting children in adult situations. You can't say stay in a child's place. Like it's just nothing. I just don't, I personally just don't think that is right. I don't. Because what do you do? There are some of those situations that grown adults stress out about. Think about a child, a teenager, a preteen, or whatever. Think about that. I feel like, that's just a part of not acknowledging it and sweeping stuff under the rug, and maybe, like, just telling a child, well, don't question this, because really you don't want to bring up a lot of times they don't want to bring up the guilt of the situation, the guilt of not protecting the child and stuff like that. Okay, so they're questioning it, but they got the right to. And I really don't, and it really doesn't even matter the age. Okay, a 4-year old can say, "Hey, well, why did my parents do this to me or that to me, or why did I see this or see that?" Can you tell the 4-year old stay in a child's place? No. They're already out of a child's place already. It's just like somebody has to explain it. So I just I just wanted to reiterate, what I said. And because when I say things, I say it purposely. And when I say things and I explain things, it's because I've either dealt with it, or it has I've seen it in very close proximity to me, not down the street, or whichever, in my own either immediate family, whatever, or friend or whatever. Gets hard, yes, because sometimes even when you get older and things, you've dealt with those things, and you get older, and your family still don't want to talk about it. And you know they want you to stay in a child's place even when you're not a child. And the best thing you can do is, like I always say, keep your mental healthy, and heal and and everything else. But I know there's some adults that can't deal with the stuff that they've been through as a child. There's some kids that can't deal with the stuff that there's kids that off themselves because they just can't deal with it. Can we blame them? No. But I just wanted to come here and give another penny for my thoughts, give my own perspective, and also explain exactly what I meant when I made the video, when I pretty much said, I don't agree with that full statement in certain situations. But like I always say, keep your mental healthy. And this was another penny for my thoughts.